Chapter 5 Bargain. Dangerith was quiet on the walk back to his assigned apartments. He kept his grip on Amira's arm and kept staring straight ahead. They met Thadrid halfway to the guest quarters, the knight leaning on his cane with a scowl one should never aim at an archduke. At the sight of Amira's bloody face, Thadrid's brows rose. "Got into a bit of a spat, did she?" The assassin kept her expression blank. "She'll be taking your room," Dangerith said. Thadrid bristled. "You just decided that, did you?" "You can share mine," Dangerith said. "The servants can move your things." "Perhaps." "No, Thadrid." At the command in the Archduke's voice, Thadrid turned with a huff to find the servants. The Archduke shuffled Amira through the double doors to what she recognized as the finest guest quarters the palace had to offer. Gilded edges and white lacquer panels framed the entrance, opening into a spacious foyer and receiving room. Amira doubted it was up to the standards of Menadra's palace, but it was the best one could hope to find in the north. They continued into the private sitting room off the foyer. Plush carpets and embroidered couches filling the space between the walls, hung with tapestries depicting hunt scenes and stories of Istavar's defeats. Amira studied the tapestry nearest the window that spanned one side of the room. The embroidered scene showed the Istavari sorceresses kneeling in pools of blood as the armies of Highlandale joined those of the Empire to drive them back. The assassin clenched her jaw. Queen Hyle had most likely chosen that to decorate the Archduke's room. The woman would have wanted no doubt as to where the kingdom's loyalties lie. "Sit." Dangerith showed her to one of the couches, and she obeyed, not waiting to see if her curse would force it. She held herself as upright as she could, her ribs throbbing. Her last dose of willow bark tincture had been 3 hours ago, and the pain would return soon. "Gods, I need a drink." The Archduke called to a page, and the boy came scurrying to open the cupboard near the door at the far end of the room. Through the open door, Amira glimpsed a sprawling four-poster bed with a velvet coverlet. She gulped heavily without meaning to, a sick sensation deep in her gut. "Bran, shut the bedroom door," the Archduke said. The boy obeyed before bringing a carafe of some golden liquid and 2 crystal tumblers. He set them down on the low table before the Archduke, pouring a knuckles measure into either glass. Dangerith settled himself on the couch across from Amira, tumbler in hand. "I will make a bargain with you." The assassin tilted her head to one side. "A bargain?" "An answer for an answer." Amira studied him. He wanted something. The trick would be finding out what. Without waiting for her to respond, he continued. "Who struck first? You or the Queen?" Amira was a little surprised he chose that to start. She inhaled. "I did." Dangerith glanced to the cut on her cheek and the welt forming on her temple. "If you'd struck first, your stepmother would never have had the chance to strike back." Amira looked to the side, turning her bruised cheek away from him. "You're too good for that." The assassin inhaled slowly, hands remaining neatly folded in her lap. "Talon," the Archduke called to a servant from the next room. "Bring me one of your salves." He gestured to Amira. A flutter of movement and the patter of steps announced the servant leaving to obey. Men marched into the apartment and out, carrying boxes and trunks. Thadrid cursed from the hallway. Apparently, Dangerith's order was already being obeyed. Amira would be taking the adjoining room. "Your turn," Dangerith said. It took Amira a moment to realize he was giving her the opportunity to ask a question. "Why did you want me?" Your family situation seemed to be out of hand. You know what I meant. Why did you... She shifted. Why did you want me instead of Fonra? Daedrith was quiet for a long moment. A frown settled between his brows. You are a shield, he said at last. A shield? A dagger seemed more accurate. A shield from what? My turn. Daedrith crossed his legs, one ankle resting on his opposite knee. The servant, Talon, returned with a jar of thick, white, minty ointment. He removed the large cork and offered it to the archduke, but the archduke gestured to Amira. The assassin took the jar, realizing the old man was the same one who had been in the archduke's tent that night. At the archduke's prompting, she applied a thin smear of the pungent mixture to her cheek and temple. Why did you try to kill me? Daedrith asked. What do you mean? Amira parried his question. That night last week. I don't know what you mean. It was you. Daedrith showed no trace of the anger she had expected. You came into my tent. We fought. He tipped his head and raised his drink toward her. You fought well. Where did you train? The assassin dug her nails into the grooves along the ointment jar's rim, not replying. You're mistaken, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't lie to me, Amira, the archduke said. Amira closed her eyes as the command settled on her like a net on a bird. She hadn't been sure, but now there was no denying it. Her father had given away control of his most prized possession. By accident, it seemed. I know it was you, Daedrith insisted. The assassin thought back to the night of the feast. How his eyes had found her in the dark across a crowded room. What do you want from me? She asked softly. He had ordered her not to lie, but he hadn't ordered her to answer. I want to know what you did to me that night, with your blood. King Hyle had ordered Amira to assassinate the archduke, the highest form of treason imaginable. If she confessed to that, not only would she be dead, but her father and possibly Fonra and Queen Hyle would go to the headsman too. While Amira didn't particularly care for Queen Hyle, Fonra was the only innocent member of their family. Even Amira's mother had more than enough blood on her hands to deserve death. I'm not going to hurt you, Amira, Daedrith said. As if reading her thoughts, he added, If I can help it, I won't harm your family either. If he could help it? The assassin shook her head. I don't know what you want, or even what you are, but if I'm about to die, my last act won't be selling out my family. Protecting them? Daedrith arched one eyebrow as his gaze drifted to the cuts on her face. They don't seem too concerned with protecting you. Amira raised her chin and didn't answer. Daedrith took a swig from his tumbler, watching as the servants brought in another box, with lace cravats falling out the side. Thaddred had more taste for fine clothes than his imperial cousin, it seemed. The archduke pressed again. What did you do to me that night? Amira set the jar of ointment on the table between them. He knew it was her. At any moment he might order her to tell him, and that might reveal her secret. She wanted to keep it hidden for as long as possible. I panicked. I used my blood as a medium to channel Ka in an offensive attack. I burned you. Daedrith's breathing changed ever so slightly. Excitement. Can you make it permanent? The assassin wasn't sure she heard that correctly. What? Can you make the effect last? Amira shook her head. I don't understand. You bound him. I want to know how. Amira shuddered at the memory. That thing? Yes, Daedrith said softly. That thing. He frowned a little as he studied her. How did you do it? Amira swallowed. She rarely failed to mask her feelings, but she squirmed in her seat now. The thing that had shown itself through Daedrith was the manifestation of nightmares and ghost stories she'd have preferred to leave in her childhood. Amira tugged at her sleeves, pulling them down over her wrists. She stalled, mind racing. The Archduke wasn't acting like she'd expected. He knew she'd tried to kill him, but he didn't seem to care. Instead, he'd made a huge show of asking to marry her and then intervened to protect her from her stepmother. It made no sense, and yet... What is that thing? Amira asked quietly, not looking up from her lap. What are you? Daedrith inhaled a slow breath. Answer my question. His tone was calm, but his hand shifted on his tumbler. Amira asked her own question before the curse could prompt her. Which one? Can you bind him permanently? She had to answer honestly then. I don't know. I'm not even sure what I did. Daedrith stared at her as if he were debating whether to despair or rage. Did you know about my curse? No, Amira answered. For once, she didn't mind telling him the truth. Then why did you try to kill me? Amira locked her jaw. She tried to force out a story, a farce. She tried to say that she'd been taking revenge for the Istavari, that she'd been working with a nationalist insurrection, but her jaw wouldn't move. Answer me, Amira. The command was firm but soft. Yet it didn't matter. A command was a command as far as her curse was concerned. I had no choice. Amira shouted her answer as the curse squeezed it out of her. Why not? Terror seized her. Not this. Please, not this. She was free-falling toward revealing every secret that she had so carefully guarded her whole life. And there was no way to stop it. You have nothing to lose, Daedrith said. I already know you're guilty of treason. You might have been able to move against me without consequences in the forest. But the whole of the Empire will come crashing down on your kingdom if anything happens to me in your father's palace. Amira knew that well enough. It was just as her father had said. There have been no more attempts on my life since arriving in this palace. So I assume you or someone else doesn't want that to happen. The Archduke shifted on the couch, leaning toward her just a bit. I don't care about that. You might not believe it, but I don't want war and I don't want revenge. I just want your help. And your honesty. Amira wanted to believe him. She did. He had a gentle voice and easy manner that lulled her into a sense of safety, and a kind face she wanted to trust. But she couldn't. He was the Imperial Archduke. He knew she was guilty of treason. And he could have all of Highlandale wiped out with a single word to the Aramaean army. Tell me, Daedrith insisted. Again, the words were soft, but they hit her like a hammer to the chest. No, no, no. Amira's mouth was moving before she could stop herself. I'm a Kadrahan, and I was bound to my father, and he ordered me to kill you. The words ripped out of her in a single breath. Daedrith blinked. The guards behind her stirred, but the Archduke held up a hand to keep them back. King Hyle. Why? He knows, Amira said, the words worming out her lips. About your condition. Whatever it is. Daedrith studied her like he might study a rabid dog. Why are you telling me this? You didn't want to talk a moment ago. If it's true, You're betraying your liege lord. I'm bound to you now. Amira wanted to weep at the words, but she forced back tears. My father passed my leash to you with the betrothal vows. I think by accident. I have to obey you. Amira couldn't fight back the single tear on her cheek at that. She hated herself and Dangerous and her father and the curse and the whole world in that moment. Prove it, Dangerous said, a frown creasing his brow. Tell me something you would never tell me unless you had no choice. I was relieved. Amira's mouth was moving before she could even consider what was happening. When I saw it. Relieved? She nodded. Because I saw those red eyes and I thought that, finally, I'd been sent after someone I didn't have to feel bad about killing. Dangerous's nostrils flared, but if he was offended, he gave no other sign. Tell me honestly, do you know what my curse is? No. Dangerous grimaced. What do you know? Amira wasn't sure what she was going to say until she said it. You're like me. Dangerous studied her, curiously. Like you. Amira swallowed. Her damnable curse had her saying things she hadn't even known were in her head. They can dress you up, Amira said, her voice feather-light. Parade you around a ballroom. But you're still a monster. Dangerous studied her closely, a shallow furrow at the center of his brow. You think you are a monster, milady? I am what my curse made me, Amira shot back. Then I suppose we are alike. Dangerous studied her over the rim of his tumbler as he took another sip. I believe you, the Archduke said softly. It does answer many of my questions. And now that he knew the power he held over her, there was nothing he couldn't make her do. Amira fisted her hands in her skirts. Don't hurt her, she found herself saying. Fonra didn't have any part in this. The silence dragged on for a humiliating and torturous moment as she fought back tears. She'd given up hope for herself the moment Dangerous had said he wanted her, but Fonra, she might be soft and a coward in many ways, but she didn't deserve the Empire's wrath. I have no intention of harming your sister, Dangerous finally said. But you are going to tell me everything you know about what your father is planning. Amira's head sank lower. Is he still planning an assassination? Answer me honestly. Not that I know of, Amira answered. He told me not to try again once you were here. You still wanted me dead? Yes. Why? I didn't want you to have Fonra, Amira cursed. What does it matter why? Dangerous studied the assassin closely, head to foot. After a moment, he said, Lars, Corbin, take her to the adjoining guest room and keep her guarded. No one comes in or out. The Archduke looked to Amira. You will stay in that room until Thadrid or I come to fetch you. You will not attack me or anyone in my retinue, and you will inform us at once if you sense we are in danger from any source. Are we clear? Amira glared up through her tears as his commands settled over her. The Archduke must be accustomed to dealing with Kadrahan. Not even she could find a hole in his commands. Yes, Highness, she hissed. Thadrig came in the morning to fetch her. His large ring was in place on his hand, safely guarding his caw from her use. Amira was sure she saw disappointment when he found her already waiting for him. Amira might not have control over where they went or what they did. But if she could do anything on her own terms, she would. A handful of women from Dangerous's retinue had helped her pack her belongings from her personal room. They had been under guard the whole time, watched by Dangerth's men. There had been very little to pack, just a few dresses and sets of clothes. Amira didn't have the vast wardrobe of a proper princess. Amira bade a tearful farewell to her sister, with most of the tears coming from Fonra. Thaddred had looked away at the girls crying. This morning the knight still supervised her, waiting for Dangerth along with the rest of their many party members. Amira had no servants, but 2 of the women in Dangerth's entourage, both wives of his officers, had been assigned as her servants, or jailers. Either term seemed equally suitable. By appearances, Talon, who had turned out to be Dangerth's valet, was no happier than Thaddred. The old man now sat beside her on a towering grey gelding that paid a fine compliment to the man's dour wardrobe. On her other side, Thaddred was aboard a sturdy, dappled rouncey. For the most part, he refused to look at her, and when he did, his mouth quirked as if he were about to make some snide remark. The archduke emerged from the palace beside King Hyle, when Dangerth spotted her across the courtyard astride a small dun mare. She could have sworn his shoulders relaxed, like he had let out a breath. He then turned and finished exchanging pleasantries with her father. This departure was sudden, no matter how one looked at it. The archduke had originally been slated to stay 3 weeks to hold court and celebrate the engagement. From Fonra, Amira had learned that rumors claimed the archduke was either eager to finalize the nuptials and consummate his marriage, or under the spell of an Istavari enchantment, or both. Amira watched him approach through the tight press of pack horses. His traveling cloak, high boots, and leather jerkin were a far cry from his courtly attire. Yet he still wore them like an emperor. His servants and guards trailed after him like armored shadows. Dangerth avoided looking at her directly, swinging up on board a white stallion decked out with the imperial colors. The horse pawed and snorted, eager to be off. Around them, men, women, horses, and mules were stomping, shifting, readying. Crowds of servants and nobles alike packed the edges of the courtyard and leaned out the windows overlooking the stables. A number of Highlandale guards served as a perimeter around the archduke's people, keeping back the sightseers. Amira was likely going to her death, but all the same she didn't feel sadness at the prospect of leaving, though Amira had grown up with many of the faces that now gawked in her direction. She couldn't imagine missing them. Only Fonra, sweet, soft, weeping Fonra, made Amira feel anything other than cold resignation. Her sister stood beside Queen Hyle now, weeping. It probably looked like Fonra was crying for her own lost chance to be empress. Maybe she was. Fonra rarely talked about her dreams and ambitions. Perhaps the Empire's white throne had been one of them. Amira ignored Dangerth as he settled into his horse's saddle. Her chances for escape would be best on the road. But even if she escaped, where would she go? Her mother's people had left her to her curse a long time ago. For an imperial bride to disappear would be the worst shame the Fandulian house could suffer. They would never allow her to go free. They would hunt her to the ends of the earth, even if she hadn't been guilty of treason and discovered Dangerth's worst secret. The palace gates opened and the imperial procession moved out at a steady trot. A contingent of soldiers encircled the archduke and Amira beside him, their snorting horses eager to be off. They rode out the castle gates, clomped across the drawbridge, and made it onto the flat plain surrounding the castle. She took stock of their numbers, noting a few faces of the knights and how heavily armed they were. Thaddred cast her a dark look, noticing her observation. She faced the front again, and stared past the helms of the knights riding before them. They rode all morning, leaving Lashera to cheers and well wishes. Regardless of the stir caused by the archduke's unexplained change of brides and his sudden departure, No one dared show anything less than love and loyalty.